This is one of these positions that Sharon Harris was supposed to do, so I'm going to use the introduction that she did. I wish I could do it in her delightful southern drawl, but I don't have that in me. So, our keynote speaker today is Michael Cloud, and his speech is titled, "Big Government is the Disease, and Libertarians have the Only Cure." Harry Browne wrote that Michael Cloud is the master of libertarian persuasion. He's the author of Secrets of Libertarian Persuasion and a brand new book released recently, Unlocking More Secrets of Libertarian Persuasion. If you've not ever read one of Michael's books, they are wonderful for short, pithy ways to answer all kinds of questions and to be a significantly improved persuader for liberty. They are available out in the hall. In 2000, the Libertarian Party members overwhelmingly voted Michael Cloud the best libertarian communicator in America and honored him with the Thomas Paine Award. He launched and organized Harry Browne's 1996 presidential campaign. He was the project manager and the events fundraiser for the 1996 and 2000 Harry Browne Libertarian presidential campaigns. Between January 1995 and December of 2000, Michael Cloud and 4 other Libertarian Party leaders formed the Archimedes Project team, grew the Libertarian Party membership from 10,000 dues-paying members to over 34,000 dues-paying members. From 1995 until the end of 2002, Michael personally fundraised over $5.3 million for Libertarian Party candidates and our national and state party organizations. In 2002, he was the Libertarian candidate for U.S. Senate against John Kerry and won 368,000 votes, 19% of the vote in Massachusetts, or Taxachusetts. In 2002 and 2008, Mr. Cloud and his political partner, Carla Howell, sponsored libertarian ballot initiatives to end the Massachusetts state income tax. They didn't win, but they got 886,000 votes in 2002, 45% of the vote. And 914,000 votes in 2008 to try to end the Massachusetts state income tax. In 2008, they stampeded the teachers' union into spending $7.5 million to keep the Massachusetts state income tax. In 2010, Cloud and Howell sponsored a ballot initiative to cut the Massachusetts sales tax from 6.25 to 3%, the largest cut allowed by law. They didn't win, but they got 967,000 votes and forced the teachers' union to spend over $4,500,000 to keep the 6.2% sales tax. Michael is a libertarian writer, he is a speaker, and more importantly, he is an activist and he is a good friend of mine, and I am honored to introduce Michael Cloud, our keynote speaker.
Exactly how he would start this speech. And so as a tribute to my friend, my teacher, my mentor, and later my political partner, Harry Browne, let me begin by saying, government doesn't work. It can't educate your children, it can't deliver the mail, and it can't keep our streets safe. Government doesn't work. Harry Browne's idea finally sunk in among the densest elements in America, Republican leadership. I'd say that with respect to, there's a lot of great Republicans. None of them are elected except Ron Paul. A number of people have started saying that they agree that government doesn't work. They agree that government can't do these things that we want it to do. They say bad things about government. They make odd noises, and they say if you elect them, they'll stop the boogeyman from bothering you and your family. All we need is a Republican president, a Republican Supreme Court, a Republican House, and a Republican Senate. And then we can really get big government under control of the Republican Party. You see, they just don't get it. As a matter of fact, I'm going to tell you they can't get it. If they were capable of getting it, they would have gotten it. And I mean that with love, because there are a number of great young Republicans who in fact are libertarians. They are supporters of Dr. Ron Paul. I contend that big government is the disease. It's a malignant tumor that is wrecking America, ruining your family, crushing businesses, and suffocating all the human freedoms that we love and want. I contend there's a reason why big government doesn't work. And part of this developed through working with Harry Brown, and part of it I've developed since the man passed on. There are 5 iron laws of big government. The first iron law is big government doesn't work. It doesn't produce the results you want. It doesn't produce the results we're promised. The second law is big government programs often make things worse for the very people they're intended to help. The third iron law is big government programs create new problems. Sometimes they call them unintended consequences. Maybe they're unintended, but they are fully foreseeable. 4, the fourth iron law is big government programs are wasteful and costly. And the 5th iron law, and the 5th reason why big government is the disease, is the big government programs. Every single one of them divert money and energy and human resources from positive uses, from productive uses, and I mean private uses. This is the discussion that the talking heads on Fox don't want us to have, that the talking heads on CNN don't understand, and the talking heads on MSNBC, well, nobody's watching, the hell with them. Except Rachel Maddow, she's the babe. Let's go to the first iron law, the first part of the disease. Big government programs don't work. First, no matter what's promised you when a politician runs for government, no matter what they tell you the results of the program are going to be, it is always Wile E. Coyote with one more Acme product. They don't deliver as promised. They don't accomplish what they're intended to. Now, I'm not claiming that 100% of government programs, 100% of the time, in 100% of the cases, absolutely positively never do anything good. All of us know at least someone named Rowling who was on welfare and wrote Harry Potter. We all know 1 or 2 stories of someone who somehow got benefits from a government program, whether it's student loans, whether it's welfare, whether it's Social Security, whether it's disability. That's true. You can find 1 or 2 of those. And broke clocks are right twice a day. You see, I'm not claiming 100% success here. I'm contending what I call the drunk driver rule. Now, I'd write this down if I were you, if you're sober. If you're not sober, have the person next to you be your designated driver. The drunk driver rule is very simple. All of us know people who at some time or other had too much to drink and shouldn't have gotten behind the wheel, right? Maybe you've been one of those people, and if you have, don't do it. We're libertarians. We believe in personal responsibility. The drunk driver rule acknowledges that no matter how drunk people are, some drunks, some of the time, somehow or other get home safely. Do you want them on the road? Do you want your children to carpool with drunk drivers? Do you want drunk drivers driving an ambulance, taking you to the hospital? Of course not. It's because most of the time, under most of the circumstances, most drunk drivers are mostly dangerous that we don't let them on the road. So it's very, very simple to understand the rule. The first big government program doesn't work. It's the same as the drunk driver rule. Step away from the government program. Now, as Damon Runyon taught us, the race is not always to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, but that's the way to bet. And that's the rule with the first rule of big government, which is government programs don't work. That's the first reason the disease is dangerous and destructive to you and everybody you love. The second iron law, big government programs regularly make things worse, especially for those they seek to help. They blow back, they backfire, they boomerang, they rebound in exactly the wrong direction. The first evil of big government programs is they create a culture of learned helplessness, of learned dependency. There have been a lot of scientific studies on this from people like Martin Seligman of the University of Pennsylvania, where they study animals and they study people and what happens when you guarantee them good results, no matter how reckless and irresponsible their behavior is. And the answer is we become weak, we become helpless, we become dependent upon government, which is to say the fast route to ruining our life and setting a poor, poor example for our children and our neighbors' children. You can read books like Losing Ground by Charles Murray and see, when you actually examine the results of the government program, whether it's welfare, whether it's student loans, whether it's other programs, the results will consistently backfire, regularly and repeatedly. A number of years ago, back in the early 60s, there was a book written called The Federal Bulldozer. How many read it way back in the day? Some of us have. Those would be the people who are graying a little bit, or as I call it, getting better looking. The Federal Bulldozer was written as a doctoral thesis by a guy named Martin Anderson. Federal Bulldozer looked at federal urban renewal programs. Now here's the government. The government comes along and says, wow, poor people live in really cruddy houses. That's the definition of poor. You wear cruddy clothes, you live in cruddy neighborhoods, and you live in cruddy houses. That's what you can do when you're poor. And the government said, let's solve this problem. Let's bulldoze all those awful houses and build a really nice high-rise slums. So the government knocks over the houses and builds new homes for the people. Great thing, huh? Not exactly. For every 4 homes they bulldozed, they built 1. 3/4 of the people intended to be helped became homeless. That's how government programs backfire, and it's not because the wrong guys are in charge. We'll get back to that. You can read The Tragedy of American Compassion by Marvin Olasky and see other empirical evidence. Or From Mutual Aid to the Welfare State by David Vieta. And again, we're going to find out the government programs just ain't doing what the people say they are. So whatever you want to accomplish, step away from the government, step away from the tax dollars, turn it over to the private sector where things productive and positive get done. The third part of the big government disease, the third iron law, is big government programs create new problems, so-called unintended consequences. How many people here know what happens when the federal government raises minimum wage? Raise your hand. Is there anybody who thinks it really improves the standard of living of poor people? What it does is it throws out poor young black teenagers, Latino teenagers, and other minorities. It throws out of work the least educated, the least able, and the most disadvantaged people in our country. Minimum wage laws destroy jobs. And so instead of having a poor-paying job, you're left with no job. That's not a good thing in America. Now, I don't know how many of you, how many of you have get advocates for self-government through Liberator Online? Please applaud if you get it. Okay. If you go to their website, you can get a terrific little book written by Jim Cox called Minimum Wage, Maximum Damage. And if you haven't read this book, wonderful short, gets right to the point exactly why minimum wage laws hurt, why they backfire, why they create new problems. But you don't have to just look at minimum wage, look at drug prohibition. Wow, people are using drugs, that's bad. I've got an idea, let's ban them. Oh, that's good. And the consequences are violence, corruption, waste. Prisons filled with people who smoked a marijuana cigarette? Are you kidding me? Whole new sets of problems. We've turned 17-year-old teenagers into life felons. Anti-gun laws. I don't know how many of you are strong defenders of the Second Amendment. I hope you all are. Anti-gun laws. Whenever they're passed, wow, bad people are getting guns. I've got an idea. Let's pass a law saying bad guys can't get guns. That's a great idea. Of course, criminals follow laws really well. That's why we call them criminals. Now, does that make sense? No, it doesn't. And that's one more example of a new problem being created by government. Now, you notice I haven't gotten into any of the moral arguments. I haven't gotten into any of the details about why liberty is good. I've simply pointed out that whatever our competitors in the Democratic and Republican Party want to achieve, big government can't do it. The fourth iron law is big government programs are wasteful and costly. Now, ladies and gentlemen, everybody says they know what waste is, but let me tell you, there are three kinds of waste. And if you don't know what they are, you need to write them down. Please don't lose this, otherwise this statement will be wasted. First kind of waste is paying champagne prices for beer quality. We all know about that, being overcharged. There's a second kind of waste, paying champagne prices for champagne when all you need is beer. Or as we call them, government conventions. 3, paying champagne or beer prices when you don't need either. All three are kinds of waste. All three are layered throughout government. Now, I want to give you something that you can do to people in this hotel who aren't delegates here. It's called helping them grow spiritually. And my question that you're going to love, so please write this one down. Get somebody saying, I just heard this weird guy give a keynote speech and he asked a weird question, and I'm wondering what your reaction to this question is. Ask them, out of every dollar you pay in federal taxes, how many cents would you estimate are wasted? Now, you know, we've actually done surveys on that. There are polling companies that have done that. How many people think that the average taxpayer says, whoa, government is not wasteful. They know how to carefully spend a dollar. It's probably only a penny or two. Anybody here? Good, glad to see that. How many think it might be 20 cents the average American thinks are being wasted out of federal spending? How many think it might be 30? Do I hear 40? How about 41 cents out of every dollar? That's the average answer when average people are asked this average question. Why do you want to ask the question? So they'll go home and say, I just heard a real weird question from a guy who heard a weird speaker. And I'm wondering, out of every dollar you pay in taxes, how many cents do you think are wasted? Wouldn't you like everybody in America asking that question? Wouldn't you like every American asking how much waste there is? Let's go back to the Reagan administration for a minute. How many remember the Grace Commission? J. Peter Grace and a group of private business leaders went to President Reagan and said, hi, we'd like to measure waste in the federal government. And Reagan said, well, go ahead. J. Peter Grace and his group of retired business people went through the federal government, looked for needless duplication, waste, and so on. They did this in 1981 and 1982, and they presented the Grace Report. They discovered that we could remove 31% of all federal spending without affecting any results produced by the federal government. Let me say that again. You could eliminate 31% of federal spending and still spend the same amount for public schooling, the same amount for military, and the same amount to produce results like building highways. The rest of it is internally wasted and needlessly duplicated. Now you think, wouldn't that be fun if we could do that? 31% of federal spending with a $3.8 trillion budget is about the amount we collect in a federal income tax. Just saying. 31% of today's federal spending would mean that we could balance the budget without cutting anybody off Social Security, without cutting anybody out of Medicare, without reducing any of the government programs that people outside this room want the government to still do. And the people inside the room want to turn over to the private sector. So try this question when we're talking about waste in government, to your friends, to your non-libertarian family members, by which I mean your family members. We vaccinated them against becoming libertarians just by arguing with them. Go on, admit it. Ask your family members, if we could identify and remove 31% of government spending, the waste, without affecting government services, without affecting the government's results, would you want it? Now, I've tried that on a dozen people in the casino last night. Guess what the answer was? Where do I sign up? And I said, the Libertarian Convention is over here. I'm going to come back to this because I've got a proposal for every Libertarian candidate this year where we can get a great deal of support by simply proposing race commissions, state after state, city after city, and with all of our federal candidates. Now, I said the iron law number 4 has 2 parts. Government is too wasteful and it's too costly. I'm going to give you Michael's riddle. So, Grasshopper, listen carefully. Why does big government overspend? Because it can. Ah, you say. I understand. Why doesn't private business overspend? Because it can't. Because it would come out of their pocket. Because they want the money. Now, the 5th iron law, the 5th part of the big government disease, is that big government programs divert money and energy from positive and productive uses. Jean-Baptiste said, the free market economist in the late 1700s, defined the word entrepreneur. You're going to love this. This is one of these great terms. Entrepreneur is someone who moves resources from where they are less valuable to areas in which they are more productive and create a higher yield. That makes sense, doesn't it? Cloud's corollary and big government does just the opposite. Think about it. Where do they get the taxes for the most productive Americans? Where do they put the money? The least productive Americans, by which I mean government employees. Now, we have to realize, with the 5th iron law, when I say divert money and energy from positive productive uses, is that taxation is a zero-sum game. Every dollar the government takes from you in taxes is a dollar you can't spend on your family, a dollar you can't invest, a dollar you can't save for your retirement, a dollar you can't put your children through school, and neither can your neighbors. Neither can the people we love. Neither can the communities who need the help. This is a competition of tax consumers in government versus tax producers. Or, as I like to look at it, the ticks versus the dog. I come out for the dog. You see, big government is overhead. The private sector is income. Big government is consumption. The private sector is production. Every dollar taxed is a dollar you can't spend or save, invest, or give to effective private charities. That's the reason that big government is the disease. These are the reasons you will never hear discussed on Fox, because if they discussed them on Fox, they would have to admit that the biggest abusers of big government are their guests. I will give a bye to Judge Napolitano, who I love, and John Stasser, who is wonderful. Now, if you say, you're right, if you tell this to Republican leaders, they go, you're right, I agree with you. Wait for the next sentence. And the reason why government doesn't work is the wrong policies are in charge. If we had Republican big government policies, they would work. Okay. There's a second problem. The wrong people are running big government. If my friends were running big government, we'd do it right. We know how to crush people in efficient, business-like fashions. We're government contractors. Anyway, third, this is one you have to go on MSNBC, and that's probably channel 107 on your dial. The reason big government programs, and I'm not making this up, I promise you I have not used drugs today. I don't use drugs at all, but I definitely didn't use them today. Here's the reason they say big government programs don't work. Because we're not spending enough money. Man, the reason you're drunk is you haven't consumed enough alcohol. Oh. Or my favorite, we're not giving the programs enough time to work. If only you could give it another 50 years or 100 years, or until hell freezes over, then it would work. Okie doke. And their argument is if our guys were in charge, we'd fix it and we'd reform it. Have you heard those arguments? Have you heard those statements? Have you heard them again and again and again? And are you sick of them? See, big government's not just a disease. It causes most of the Republican leaders to be carriers. Now, I'm going to present some ideas that are going to sound obvious. Cloud's first law is obvious means overlooked. Write it down. Let me tell you something. This society of ours really messes up when we forget the obvious. Men, how many are married? Raise your hand for men. Oh, come on, some of you guys aren't sure. You know you're married. Put your hand up. How many are married? Okay. When is the best time to tell your wife you love her before someone else does? That's obvious, isn't it? It's telling the person, without you, my life would be a black hole, an empty husk. You make my life wonderful. I am so grateful I married you. If I had it to do over again, I would do it in a heartbeat. Oh, that would wreck a lot of marriages if you said that, wouldn't it? I don't think so. Obvious means overlooked. So let me go into why big government programs don't work. And one of these will sound to you as though I have consumed drugs, but I haven't. It's the Jonestown Kool-Aid test for big government. 1978, Jim Jones, who was a lefty Christian minister in San Francisco. That sounds redundant, doesn't it? Lefty, San Francisco. It's sort of like right-wing lefty. It sounds really strange to me. Anyway, Jim Jones had the People's Temple, and these guys thought they were being followed. Well, that could be a sign of paranoia, or today it could just be the TSA. Now, I believe that these guys finally got it and they said, we've had it. We don't want to be followed. We don't want to be checked by the FBI. We're going to Guyana. Good career move, huh? Nice place to live. Lots of jungle, not a lot of government around there. They moved down there, and people started finding out they were abusing their parishioners, they were violating their freedoms, and a number of people started looking into it. So Jim Jones, being someone who understood politics, snapped into action. He arranged for Jonestown Kool-Aid. Jonestown Kool-Aid, for those of you who remember, they convinced, they persuaded, they pressured 913 members of their church to commit suicide by drinking cyanide-laced Kool-Aid. It wasn't actually Kool-Aid, it was flavored. Kool-Aid is much, much better. There were 4 ingredients: grape Kool-Aid mix, drinking water, sugar, and our old favorite, potassium cyanide. Now, everybody here recognizes potassium cyanide's not good. How many of you think that the reason these people died was it was the wrong flavored Kool-Aid? Anybody? If only we'd used strawberry Kool-Aid, everybody would have been peppy and excited. It would have been an energy drink. No? How about if we changed who handed it out? Instead of the Democrats handing it out to their people, the cyanide-less Kool-Aid, if it had been handed out by Republicans, these people would still be alive today, right? No? Okay, just checking. It's the cyanide, silly. What is the cyanide in the big government programs that causes it to be destructive? Force, coercion, the initiation of force, making people do things, forbidding them to do other things. That's why big government programs dismally fail. Whenever people go, no, it's just the size of big government. No, the size of big government is caused by the force and the fact that they can take your money. Walmart does $500 billion worth of business every year, and I've never felt forced. I always shop Target. Funny though, when I got audited by the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, recently, I said to them, you know, you've served me enough. I think I want to talk to your competitor. And they said, boy, you went to public school, didn't you? And I said, yes, I did. You see, the Democrats and Republicans believe that government is broken and has to be fixed. I'm going to offer a strange hypothesis that I'm going to ask you to entertain, and I'm going to ask you to do something with it. I'm going to ask you to share it with your friends back home. Are you willing to try this as just an act of pity for a poor young libertarian? You see, these guys believe government is malfunctioning. I'd write that word down. They think the reason big government programs don't work is they're malfunctioning. What they need is a tune-up or an overhaul. They need Ross Perot to get under the hood. They need John Kerry to help work it out. They need Nancy Pelosi to hold hands with Harry Reid and skip down the aisle. They need Paul Ryan to straighten it out. They believe big government programs can be reformed and run like a business. And they can't. Because business can't compel you to shop with it. The fundamental difference between the government sector and the private sector is force. That is the libertarian insight. That is why our libertarian pledge says that no individual or group of individuals may initiate the use of force because of that. Now I'm going to offer you my argument with Harry Brown. Harry and I had wonderful conversations. How many of you met him when he was on tour? Did you meet him? Wasn't he terrific? Absolutely terrific. I'm going to ask you to engage in something I asked Harry to do, and he did it for me, so play along with me. I want you to willingly suspend your disbelief. Set aside your skepticism just for a moment and entertain a hypothesis with me. Niels Bohr, one of those famous physicists, said, the opposite of a trivial truth is a falsehood. Trivial truth would be 2 + 2 = 4. And the opposite is 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4, and that's false. But, he said, the opposite of a great truth is often another great truth. So let me offer a revision of the first iron law of big government. Harry Brown says, big government doesn't work. Michael Cloud responded, you're wrong, Harry. Big government works perfectly. Think about that for just a moment. Big government works exactly the way it's designed to work. It works exactly as nature allows it to work. Let me offer you some examples. Cobra venom works perfectly. It does. You can try it on children. You can try it on elected Republicans. You can try it on other elected Republicans. You can have your children try it on elected Republicans. Did I mention elected Republicans? Okay. And I'm going to come back to why I'm picking on the Republicans, because they're in dire need of spiritual growth. Hand grenades and landmines, they work perfectly too. Tarantulas work perfectly. Tigers, when they attack you, if you're Siegfried and Roy, work perfectly. Oh, is it too soon? I contend that these 5 iron laws are unalterable, unfixable characteristics of big government. You cannot have big government and not have those results. It is unreformable, unfixable, and if that's true, then I offer this hypothesis. What if government isn't malfunctioning? What if big government is producing exactly as its nature dictates? What if those results are inevitable with all big government programs? And our libertarian economists and our libertarian theorists, from Murray Rothbard to Ayn Rand, from Ludwig von Mises to Menger, von Bauer, to Henry Hazlitt, to Harry Brown, all across history have told us it is true. If that is true, then what is the solution to the disease of big government? Dismantle it, liquidate it, and give back the money to the working men and women who earned it. We have to remember, whenever we're talking about cutting government spending, that's only the first half of our libertarian sentence. Never say just, we're going to cut government spending without the second half and return every dollar to the men and women who earned it, the taxpayers. Our job as libertarians, we've got to remember this. Democrats and Republicans say, I'm going to go to Washington with a pen to write new legislation. What are you libertarians going to do? We've got an eraser. The Democrats and Republicans say, we're going to Washington, D.C. to sow the seeds of weeds. Weeds can make America better for pests like me. And libertarians say we're going to pull up the weeds by the root. We're going to dismantle, repeal, remove, reduce as much as we can, as fast as we can, as long as we can, and return every dollar to the men and women who earned it. Does that make sense? We want to shrink government down till it's small and limited. A tiny fraction of its current size, power, spending, authority, responsibility. We want to move it down to the size where it's like the old Andy Griffith show. It's Andy of Mayberry, doesn't even wear guns. Very small government. And Barney gets a gun, but you don't let him carry a bullet in it. That kind of small government. We want government so small they start putting its picture on the side of milk cartons. Have you seen these guys? You see, we have to realize something. Government at all levels collects from you and you and you. 47 cents for every dollar you earn is taken from you in local plus state plus federal taxes. 47 cents out of every dollar. Do you realize how much better your life could be? How much more productive your family could be? How much more generous you could be to your charities, your church, to your friends and your family? Starting that new business, helping your children along, providing for your own future, or helping people who didn't make the same choices you did, because we have hearts and we care. All of that is possible with huge tax reductions, huge spending reductions, this year. Now, the Libertarian Solutions are very simple. If you're running for office, I believe every Libertarian candidate should propose state, local, and federal grace commissions every year. Private sector business people going through the government waste. Why private sector? Because they have had to save money throughout their career. They've realized that every dollar they waste comes out of their family income, and out of their ability to hire people, and out of their ability to expand their business. Second, libertarians need to propose a movement that is already going in the United States, total government transparency. Every dime, every dollar ought to be posted online. And let me offer just a friendly little libertarian idea. Can you imagine if your local budget were online and you found out how much the cops were paying for tires and it was too much? Can you imagine what you would do if you saw how much they were paying for office space and it was double or triple the private sector, we could boot them out and we could reduce those and go back to beer prices for beer instead of champagne prices. Here's the proposal. It's got to be readable online. It's got to be posted. If you don't post it, your department gets no money until it does. If you illegally post it, you get to serve in prison next to the child molesters, the rapists, and the Wall Street criminals. Well, not the Wall Street criminals. They're in D.C. working with the Republicans. Now, I contend that it ought to be readable by an average 12-year-old public school student. Now, you can immediately see the cleverness of this idea. They're either going to improve the education or they're going to make it more readable. I'm always thinking about these things. We can do what Carla Howell is doing with her Libertarian Solutions, where we're showing libertarian ways of dismantling, disgovernmentalizing, and reducing the size and power of government. If you're running for office, you have an enormous ability to not just get elected, but while you're running, to educate the public on libertarian alternatives. It is the greatest. David Nolan, when he originally wrote The Case for a Libertarian Political Party and published it in the Individualist magazine, I read it when it originally came out. And he said the biggest advantage of running for office is educating the public. And I contend that one of the big values of every libertarian candidate is educating the public. Now I'm going to put that to the test. How many of you are running for office this year? Would you please stand up? Thank you. Thank you. Now, we got to remember that when we're running for office, we're interviewing for a job. We're not being philosopher kings. When someone says to you, why should I vote for you? They're asking you, what will you do in office? I'm going to dismantle the big government programs and give you back $3,000 a year of your own money. Not just once, but every year. This is better than the lottery and has much, much better odds. Now, there's an idea floating around the Libertarian Party, and I'm going to have to straighten it out right now. The idea is that the job and the mission of the Libertarian Party is to elect libertarians. That's a half-truth. Now, let me stop right there. I didn't come up with this insight. This was given to me as a dumb young libertarian by Dick Randolph, our first elected libertarian in the state of Alaska. 1978, Dick Randolph gets elected, and we go into shock. A libertarian actually got elected? Holy moly! We might have a chance. I got a chance to meet Dick when he did a tour of the lower 48. And I said, how did you feel after that victory, after that success in winning? And he looked at me like I was slightly dense, which is probably true. And he said, you just don't get it, do you? And I said, no. And he said, getting elected is the starting line, not the finish line. The test is, first, can I get elected? And second, what am I going to do when I'm there? And that's what Carla Howell's Libertarian Solutions are about. That's what a number of libertarians around the country are sharing with us. Your run for office can educate and influence even if you don't win. I want to give you a couple of examples, and then I want to leave you with some good thoughts. 1978, Ed Clark. Is Ed here? Mr. Clark, thank you so much. 1978, Ed Clark ran for governor of California. He ran a big campaign, he attracted a great campaign team, and he ran, in my opinion, one of the finest libertarian campaigns we have ever done. It starts with a good candidate and a good team and good issues. Ed Clark ran to dramatically reduce the spending of the California legislature. But there were two other items that he put as part and parcel of his campaign. That year in 1978, Proposition 13 was on the ballot. Dan Wiener remembers about this. I know he worked on it. I know Bruce Legoskia. I know Ed Clark and Alicia Clark did. The purpose was, with inflation, prices of houses were going up so much, people were being evicted to pay their property tax. That's not right. Along come Gann and Jarvis, they introduce a bill that rolls back the tax and cuts it back. Ed Clark campaigned for Proposition 13.